Welcome to The Explainer. I am so excited you're here. Today, we're diving straight into the molecular level of our daily diets. Our goal is simple, but honestly pretty ambitious. We're going to demystify the real, peer-reviewed science behind natural compounds and metabolic health. Let's be clear, we are not talking about fad diets today. We are talking about hard biological mechanisms. And that brings us to a wildly counterintuitive question. Can eating carbohydrates, taking shots of vinegar, and aggressively dumping spicy chili peppers on your food actually rival modern weight loss drugs? I know, it sounds like a total internet myth, right? But the clinical data actually tells a completely different story. We're going to look at how everyday pantry staples can literally be utilized as highly targeted biological tools for weight management. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's mechanisms tour. We'll start with the weight loss dilemma, turn up the heat with capsaicin, balance things out with apple cider vinegar, reshape the gut with resistant starch, and finally, wrap it all up with the science of synergy. All right, part one, the weight loss dilemma. Let's quickly look at the limits of modern interventions. To really understand why these natural compounds are getting so much attention from researchers right now, we first have to grasp the massive scale of the global obesity epidemic. I want you to let this number sink in for a second. 1.9 billion. Yeah, billion with a B. According to World Health Organization data, that is the estimated number of adults worldwide who are currently classified as overweight, with over 600 million of those classified as obese. It's a staggering global health challenge that drastically increases the risks of cardiovascular diseases, type 2 diabetes, and chronic inflammation. So why are our current interventions struggling to fix this? Well, traditional approaches have some pretty severe limitations. We all know that strict low-calorie diets and intense exercise regimens suffer from notoriously poor long-term compliance. On the medical side, pharmaceuticals can cause adverse and sometimes severe side effects. Think gastrointestinal issues, liver or kidney injury, or even pancreatitis. And while bariatric surgery is highly effective, it's physically invasive, super expensive, and obviously not scalable to 1.9 billion people. This perfectly sets up the urgent clinical need for natural, accessible, and most importantly, safe alternatives. Moving right along to part two, capsaicin, time to turn up the heat. We're heading straight into the spice cabinet to look at the primary active compound found in chili peppers and how it dramatically alters our biology. Let's break down the interaction between two very specific biological terms. First up, TRPV1. Think of this cellular receptor as a specific lock on your cells. Second, BAT, which stands for brown adipose tissue. Now, unlike standard white fat that just sits there and stores energy, brown fat actually burns energy to generate heat. It's essentially your body's internal furnace. And guess what? Capsaicin is the key that fits perfectly right into that TRPV1 lock to crank the thermostat up. Now, what's really interesting about this is how the sequence plays out. Step 1, you consume dietary capsaicin. Step 2, this physically activates those TRPV1 receptors in your gastrointestinal tract. Step 3, this activation triggers your brown adipose tissue. And step 4, the magic happens. It's called non-shivering thermogenesis. Your body starts actively oxidizing fat just to produce heat, which increases your resting energy expenditure. Biologically speaking, consuming capsaicin mimics the exact same fat-burning mechanisms your body uses when you're exposed to freezing cold temperatures. How wild is that? All right, let's cool down a bit with part 3, ACV, the metabolic balancer. When we look at the clinical efficacy of apple cider vinegar in recent meta-analyses, it's fascinating because it is highly dose-dependent. A moderate dose of 5 to 15 milliliters a day gives you a modest reduction in body mass index. But if you bump that to 30 milliliters per day, which is roughly 2 tablespoons, bam, that is where we see the maximum statistically significant reduction in BMI and body weight. Exactly how significant is that reduction? Negative 7.45 kilograms. That is over 16 pounds. That's the striking average weight loss observed in a major 12-week clinical trial for subjects consuming ACV. Just for some context here, losing over 7 kilos is highly clinically relevant, and it actually rivals the baseline outcomes of several pharmaceutical interventions. And this is all from a simple fermented apple product. So how is a vinegar doing this? And this brilliantly illustrates the biological mechanics at play. In the ACV group, the acetic acid acts like a literal brake pedal on your digestion. It delays gastric emptying, meaning you just feel full for much longer. But even more importantly, it activates the AMPK pathway. You can think of AMPK as a master metabolic switch that promotes fat oxidation while simultaneously inhibiting lipogenesis, which is just the creation of new fat. The control group without the ACV experiences rapid gastric emptying and standard fat storage. Acetic acid fundamentally rewires how your body processes energy. Which brings us to part 4, resistant starch, the gut reshaper. I want to ask you a question that challenges a very persistent internet myth. What if a specific carbohydrate could actually help you lose weight? We are so conditioned to think carbs equal fat, period. But resistant starch is a totally unique type of carbohydrate because it physically resists digestion in the small intestine, meaning it doesn't spike your blood sugar at all. Instead, it travels all the way down to your colon, completely intact. And here is what happens when it finally gets there, straight from the medical literature. Quote, resistant starch intake facilitates weight loss in humans by reshaping the gut microbiome. Because it isn't digested early on, resistant starch acts as a highly potent fertilizer for the beneficial bacteria in your gut. It literally feeds your microbiome, physically reshaping the entire ecosystem in your digestive tract to promote a metabolic state that actually favors weight loss over fat storage. Let's pull the whole picture together in part 5, the science of synergy. When we bring all of these elements together, we see this incredible, multifaceted approach to metabolic health. If you use capsaicin, you're targeting that TRPV1 receptor to ramp up thermogenesis and actively burn fat. Toss in some apple cider vinegar, and you're targeting the AMPK pathway to pump the brakes on digestion and increase satiety. And if you incorporate resistant starch, you're targeting the microbiome to rewire your gut flora. You are basically attacking the problem of obesity from 3 completely independent, scientifically validated biological angles all at once. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, the data is pretty clear. Your own pantry holds the keys to evidence-based metabolic health. These aren't just fun flavorings. They are extremely potent biological tools. So armed with what you know now about the hidden mechanisms of capsaicin, acetic acid, and resistant starch, how are you going to rethink your ingredients? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this empowers you to look at your next meal through a totally new scientific lens. Catch you next time.